Crane,
Here.
Ms. Catalina,
Here.
Mrs. Egan,
Here.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Here.
Mr. Heyer,
Here.
Mr. Need,
Here.
Mrs. Horst.
Here. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered the public community hearing. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda items 3 and 9. Item 2 is approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Any questions or discussion from the board? We got to say, all in favor say aye, now that we're all together again.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is citizens' request to address the board. You are given 2 opportunities to address the board. Under item 3.1, you can request to address the board about any topic that's on tonight's agenda. And under item 9, you are welcome to address the board on any topic. When asking questions or making comments, please state your name and direct your comments to Mrs. Kelly, Vice President, Washington Board of Education. Now that we are on our 3rd iteration of board meetings for the year, we are back in the boardroom tonight, but our audience is still participating via Zoom. My glasses are fogging up, so I can't even see on the screen. Mrs. McLean is now in charge of our audience participation, so I'm going to pause for just a moment and remind members of our audience if you wish to address the board, now is the time to indicate your interest in doing so. And thank you. I see Mrs. McLean has put our agenda on the screen this evening. Members of the audience, if you will recall, as we've gotten kind of used to your protocol for indicating your interest in addressing the board. I don't have it in front of me anymore, so I can't see it off the top of my head, is to click on the icon. Mrs. McLean, can you say it since you're seeing it on your computer?
I'm sorry. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me stop sharing real quick here.
To click on the icon at the bottom and then raise your hand.
Raise
correct?
hands, correct.
If you wish to address the board on any topic that's on tonight's agenda, let's go ahead and get those names. We have our Return to School 2020 update with Dr. Ryan, our district goals and assessment tools related to our extended learning plan, personnel changes, memorandums of understanding for our Transportation Association, for Educators Association, and approval of secondary English language arts credits.
So we have Mrs. Herzenstiel has raised her hand, so I'm going to allow her to talk.
I'm sorry, I have had 2 people text me that they can't hear a word we're saying via the Zoom.
Oh, they can't hear me.
Hello?
Okay.
The participants.
Hi, Mary. Just one moment.
Thank you so much. Let's see, we're going to let our technical crew fix that.
Mary, can you hear me?
Shows that the mic should be hot. Let's see, she's typing me in text too. Let's see if she can hear me now. Oh, I'm not getting-
Somebody says that they see that Clarkson Community Schools is muted.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
That's correct. I see it in mine. It says muted.
Should we be muted?
CCS says muted.
Oh, maybe that works. Not now.
It's not muted anymore.
I think that's better.
Got it.
Try to unmute, but you couldn't hear me. How's that? Can people hear me
We're
now?
getting feedback.
Yeah,
We
there's
need
feedback.
to, is the TV have volume?
Uh-oh.
We need to mute the TV.
Getting echoes now.
Yes, now they're saying there's a lot.
Well, it's our first night back in the boardroom, so this is bound to be a little experimental. She says we had audio. We're just making sure we get all of the feedback here in the boardroom correctly. Just give us just a moment.
Okay, are we good? What's that sound coming out of?
Wonder if it's the
Is it the
microphone.
computer here? Is this
At the podium,
broadcasting?
maybe that one shouldn't be on.
Heidi's.
Heidi's.
Maybe we should have headphones for you.
Where is it coming from?
Actually, it was
Oh,
going
is
to
it?
bring mine too.
All right.
Let me look and see
Good.
if I did.
Are we
just in
good?
case. I thought about it.
It says it's muted.
Nope, didn't bring it.
All right. How about now? Good.
Okay. Okay, well, you missed the pledge of allegiance, you missed me reading the board statement. I think they probably did it up.
So just maybe review over the question.
Stefan, I'm sorry. So I muted my computer, is the recording going to pick up? Will it pick up sound?
Yes.
It's picking me up then.
Okay, you can hear me. You know, I'm seeing the same smiling on there. What a bummer, okay.
So wait a minute. Are we getting Kelly? Okay. Do you have a regular microphone up there?
I don't have a regular microphone. Do I need a regular microphone now? Are we ditching the? Dr. Ryan and I can share.
Testing.
I like that, I can do a hand call.
Just take this one.
My sweater in.
Okay, friends in the audience, let me repeat citizens' request to address the board, since that's where we left off, and give you a chance then to indicate your interest in addressing the board again while we figure out my microphone situation. You are given 2 opportunities to address the board. Under item 3.1, where we are, you can request to address the board about any topic that's on tonight's agenda. And under item 9, you are welcome to address the board on any topic. Asking questions or making comments, please state your name and direct your comments to Mrs. Kelly Horst, President, SchoolBoard of Education. And as we have done for the past several meetings, now is the time to indicate your interest in addressing the board on topics that are on tonight's agenda. And as you can see on the Zoom screen, that is the agenda for this evening. And so if you would like to address the board on any of those topics when we get to those agenda items, but now is the time to indicate your interest in doing so. So if you would click on participants and then raise your hand, we can determine which agenda item you would like to speak about. And Mrs. McLean will activate you, and we will make sure that we have you set to address us.
I have Mary Hersenstiel, but she just needs to unmute herself.
Okay, so Mrs. Hersenstiel, if you can unmute and let us know which item you are interested in addressing the board on.
Hello, President Horst. I had raised my hand earlier just to let you know the audio wasn't working. I don't actually have a comment for tonight.
Are we good? Okay, that was easy.
Okay, Stefan, we have someone trying to speak to us through Zoom, but we can't hear her. But didn't you mute your computer?
If your computer's muted, you're supposed to hear her. Are you the host for the Zoom meeting? I
Are
think
you?
have to be
Does
the
your
other.
computer broadcast audio in the room? Somebody's needs to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, President Horst, I'd raised my hand just to let you know we didn't have audio earlier. I don't actually have a comment for tonight.
Thank you. Don't do that. Okay, troubleshooter. Okay, thank you so much. We're still working on it,
Did
but
you
we'll
get
get
it?
there. She was my plant in case it didn't work. I'm glad she was there. Okay, is there anyone else, any other members of the audience who would like to address the board this evening? On agenda items only.
I have Leanne.
So, Heidi, if we're
Good evening. I am not sure which item it's under. I'm guessing it's going to be under 5.1, the return to school update. It may end up falling under just number 9, not knowing exactly what's being said. So my guess is 5.1,
Okay,
return
very
to
good.
school update.
When we get there, after Dr. Ryan's presentation, we will come back to you then. If you will make sure your
Perfect, thank
hand is
you.
still raised. Thank you so much. And that's all? Okay, thank you so much. So, members of the audience, when we get to item 9, there will be a second opportunity for you to address members of the board. We'll move on to item 4, our superintendent update. Dr. Ryan.
Okay, this is more the general update because I'll have a more broad update. And first, I thank everybody for their attendance this evening. I think as each day seems to bring new challenges, new opportunities, taking on this in person, although uncomfortable, I think will be a new way that we are able to be together to be able to address the needs of our community. So during my overall update for agenda item 5.1, excuse me, we're going to have a more broad update that I'll give for our actual opening of schools. And then I'll give our community and our school district an update on the metrics and what we're following in terms of what learning format that we're going to continue to follow and what new information that we have to add to what we've already shared over the last several board meetings. We're going to continue as promised to do that. So thank you, President Horst.
And if you would like to go ahead, we'll just move right into presentation items. And then 5.1, Dr. Ryan, is your return to school 2020 update.
Thank you. First of all, this has been a school year like no other. In Clarkson, as your superintendent, I can tell you that we really reinvented school for this fall. And I have to first take note and applaud the incredible amount of work that our entire staff has put forth to make this last week of school incredibly successful. Looking at the effort of our teachers, our principals, our subject area coordinators, and all of our administrative and support staff, spent this summer studying, working, and really putting forth a new kind of learning. It was going to be much different than what we had experienced in the spring, and then our teachers and our staff rolled up their sleeves to really make as difficult as circumstances have been into as great of an experience in the start of school for kids that we possibly could. And I have to say, as your superintendent and looking and receiving feedback from across this district and looking at the effort of our teachers, I'd like to applaud them and really, from the bottom of my heart, tell them how impressed and proud I am of the product that they were able to bring this past week and as we go into the second week of school. Although there's obviously many kinks and bugs still to work out, I wouldn't come forth to say that everything is absolutely perfect, but we really have a much different vantage point from where we were before. And I know that whether it is a family that is in our virtual program or in our distance program, they're out of the gates and moving. We're still working out, making sure everybody is tucked in correctly as we start the first couple weeks of school, as we would in any school year. But the universal effort, I can't say in the previous experience with the number of challenges and what our staff has had to overcome, a greater start of the school year for what we've been given us in the middle of the pandemic. So that on the end of what has been brought forth, the creativity, the hard work, and the dedication of our teachers, I applaud and want that to be also recognized. Hopefully our community is seeing that as well. As far as the second major part of my update this evening has to do with our learning format. And as our community, and I know from talking to parents and staff, that not everybody has been along the entire story from August to now. So I think it's important to recap that from where we originally were in August, and we selected and the board approved to start in a distance learning format. at that time, I was incredibly frustrated by the lack of support that we had from the Oakland County Health Department. There was a lot of unanswered questions as we progressed with the start of the school year. And I want to continue to really now tell how cooperative our Oakland County Health Department is. From our county executive down through the county health department, they are now what I would say is partners with Clarkson Schools. And it just didn't start overnight. They've been working very, very succinctly with us now for more than 3 weeks. And we have weekly meetings with them, both in terms of working with the epidemiologists and the infectious disease specialists on Tuesday afternoons. And then I meet with the Oakland County Health Department leadership and the county leadership on Thursday afternoons. They are incredibly forthcoming and now very supportive of helping us not only monitor our current learning format, but also look at what the future can bring in Clarkson in terms of the potential for in-person learning. To kind of review the major parts of the metrics that the health department is working with us on, and we're working really as a micro effort with our epidemiologist that really encompasses the 6 surrounding school districts with Clarkston in that weekly basis meeting. But we're looking at first the metrics of the virus itself, of which, not being an expert in infectious disease or epidemiology, we have a number of factors that include average 14-day case counts, total confirmed and probable cases in our area in Oakland County, the 14-day average test results, percentages of confirmed and probable cases that were hospitalized, the overall number of individuals that is positive against all the individuals that are tested, and the total number of tests that are given in our area, in our county. These are all epidemiological reviews. We also augment that with assessments by our county healthcare capacity strength and looking at the infrastructure to support testing, tracing, and infrastructure containment. So many of those areas, or I'd say a lot of those areas, not in my immediate expertise, but with the team at the Oakland County Health Department, they've been monitoring us over the last 3.5 weeks, as I said, in that cooperative effort. And as far as the metrics that have to do with the virus itself, it has been stable and decreasing in terms of number of cases and the concentration of COVID, and not only in the Clarkston area, but in our section of Oakland County. They believe that's a very positive metric that supports at some point reopening, and they want us to continue to monitor that. That's one of the legs. The second leg has to do specifically with Clarkston, and that has to do with our tiered reopening approach. As everybody I believe knows by now, that as part of reopening, the health department worked with us to try to open as many programs and opportunities for kids on a smaller scale so that we could not only test our protocols, but look at the average or the spread of the virus within our school district, both in terms of staff working with students and the students themselves. These programs included, and the major ones, our early childhood program, also access for students in terms of their IEPs and being able to receive those services on a case-by-case basis within the school district, involved opening up activities, including sports, clubs, and the like to, again, test and get that tier 1 of students engaged on a daily basis within Clarkston. And the health department looked at us with that as an opportunity to really show what we could do in terms of not only the virus itself and the concentrations, but how our protocols and how effective they were. As of last check and review with our health department conversations, we've been received high marks in terms of the programs that we have already opened, which not only speaks highly to our staff and our commitment to provide a safe environment where we do work with students, but then as a stepping stone to tier 2 and further openings past that. So that's a positive metric that we've worked with them on. The third area that we've worked with them is looking at like comparable schools in our area that have immediately returned to face-to-face and what the impact on those schools has been. Obviously, being in the North End, we've been in close contact with Oxford Community Schools, which I spoke to their superintendent several times, including today, to monitor the progress of their reopening and some of the hitches and some of the graces that they found in their process, and to look and evaluate their program to see if it would cause either undue spreading of the virus or contact tracing and school closing or classroom closing efforts, and looking at how they're progressing. And they are progressing as well, going into their second week of full school in a way that they have not had major disruption, which is another positive indicator for Clarkson schools. Working with the health department, it's not just the schools surrounding us that we're examining. They're providing me data from surrounding counties, both positive and negative. There's some bright spots, and there's also some areas of concern. And are even looking at regional, the Midwest, of experiences of other health departments across this part of the country. They've been extremely helpful in trying to evaluate what the potential for disruption of school, as it is as when I said in August, that not only do we have concerns about the virus, the spread of the virus and results of that, but also the impact of keeping continuity of our program on a daily basis so that we can provide school in a semblance in a way that provides not only a safe environment, but one that we can maintain day in and day out, which is absolutely critical. So those are the three major areas, and what we've been in that conversation over the last several weeks is that we've been progressing in a very positive way. But I have to tell everybody we're not done yet. To really fully be able to summatively represent this information, working with my colleagues at the health department, we believe we probably need, or I would say we will need, and then be able to report on within the next 2 weeks in a more summative fashion of the entire month of September to be able to really draw on leveraging that information and data to making good decisions of what Clarkson Schools does next. But I should say in the same sentence, we've been advised that if we continue on both internally in the way that we've managed the Tier 1 openings, if the virus progresses and continues on a downward or stable fashion in this part of Oakland County and Oakland County, the one concern they put in there is Labor Day, and obviously that effects of how responsible individuals were during Labor Day will start to be reflected very, very soon in our county rates. But that being said, if we get past that hurdle, that we could be in a very good spot in the next 2 weeks reporting that we've had better part of a month of very stable virus progression to where they feel like that we're in a much better trajectory for re-entering school more in the immediate. I reserve, again, over the next 2 weeks to continue to collect that data and be able to share that with our community. It's on, a majority of it, on the Oakland County Public Health or Health Department website. This is not like secret information. The interpretation and the expertise by the epidemiologists at the health department is unique, at least as they afford me multiple hours a week to work with them to interpret this. But that is also positive on there. And then, as I said, if we continue to see that other schools in our immediate area, in our region, are not being majorly disrupted by the return to school and forced into a different format, those all continue in a positive way. I will present this to the Board of Education on September 28th with a glean into the potential for reopening school in very early October. So if that does transpire, that these data indicators continue to support a safe reentry into school with the precautions that we were able to bring to bear in our Tier 1 reopening, and then we can extrapolate and scale that to the entire school district with the support of our health department, I will ask for an approval at that time for that reopening. Obviously, when we reopen, it'll be over a couple-week period after the 28th board meeting so that we would be able to bring back all students. Now, understand, if there's indications from my colleagues at the health department that we are not maintaining this stable trajectory, I have absolutely no reservations in coming back to our Board of Education on the 28th and explain those reservations directly to the team. If I have reservations from our health department experts in interpreting the overall picture, I will share that as well. Safety is the top of my mind, but I look at in a very pragmatic, direct way. If I can put the other elements of our reopening plan to bear and it consistently supports the conclusion of returning to school, that's the direction I believe that I will ask for that support from our Board of Ed. On the other hand, if it's wait and see or there's other contrary information, I will share that directly, not only with our Board of Education, I'll share with our community what I'm looking at. So far, I believe we're on a very good path, but there's some of these parts of the path that we don't control as an administration, as a board, and a school district. So I maintain my commitment not to do anything which I interpreted early on as an experiment to see what would happen if we were to go back to school. And I think very much since that time in August when I came to our community to present my reservations, the virus has progressed in a positive way, and I feel like that we've been able to really show them that we can do a Tier 1 reopening in a safe way. So that to be seen. On the 28th will be a big board meeting when it comes to presenting this information. My hope that it is very little as far as based on opinion and conjecture, and is very much based on the scale, scope, and the tracking of the virus progression and our surrounding school districts as real data points to be able to compare for that evaluation for reentry or not. Me personally, and as your superintendent, and maybe that's just how I'm wired, I'm hopeful. I've been hopeful since August that I would find us a trajectory that we could be both safe, look around, be thoughtful on a potential reentry point, and at the same time, I was not willing in my professional recommendation to do it where I didn't feel like I had the support of the health department, nor did I have a clear line of sight in how to define and make sure that all of our staff and students in the community was safe. Now that I have at least the metrics and support to come to these conclusions and be able to draw them over time, I feel very positive of our potential to get there, and I will still reserve that final judgment until I get the next couple of weeks worth of data to be able to share with our board and our community. And we'll take it, as I've said, all the way since March, one step at a time. I want to do it together as a partnership because I know there's a lot of different feelings and sentiments out there. I want to do it in a way that's sensitive to the needs of our children, of getting them back into school. I want to do it to the safety of our students and staff along that way because you can't compromise one with the other. And I believe that we need to have a plan and continue on step by step between now and the 28th and past to make that recommendation. I close in this presentation of such sorts by saying that it very much doesn't end on the 28th. Whether we have, in my mind, that green light and the cooperative effort with the health department to start looking at that reentry, or we're in a position where we need to pull up from there, it will continue on week by week, my meetings with the health department to monitor what is going on in terms of COVID-19 in Clarkston and the surrounding areas. So the story doesn't end on the 28th, but will continue on until this pandemic is finished. I will do my best, to the best of my ability and with my team, to monitor this situation with the idea that I think all of us want to get back in a face-to-face learning format, but we're going to take it not only with that of getting a conclusion later this month, but we will continue to evaluate it for the rest of the year. And if at any point, even if it was just to give people a long-term outlook, becomes in a way, even if we do get back in October, if it does become with the cooperative effort of the health department to say it's not safe in some fashion for our community, our staff, or our students, and then I will be very, 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 very ready to come to our Board of Education and share that information as well. So I just wanted everybody to know there's been a tremendous amount of effort into creating the metrics and the balanced plan that we have. I've appreciated the board at our last meeting supporting our Tier 1, which I think that if we didn't have, it wouldn't give us as great of an indicator to know what our next steps forward. And I also want to applaud, as much as I criticized our Oakland County Health Department early on, I'd like to personally and professionally thank Kaylee Blaney, who's the chief epidemiologist at Oakland County, and her team within the director, Kathleen Porsley, and our cooperating contact tracer, Calandra Anderson. So we have a very good team at Oakland County backing us up. And I think when there's criticism to be had, it's fair to put that out. And when there's really accolades or support given, I'd like that whole team and really David Coultier as the Oakland County executive for his support and me giving this presentation this evening. So I believe that kind of really sums up the major areas. And obviously on the 28th, I'll be coming back with an update on those three major areas of metrics and a recommendation for our next steps. And we'll go from there. If the board has any immediate feedback or questions, I'd be more than happy to field those right now.
Thank you. Trustees, I'd like to open it up now if there's any questions or conversation, any feedback you'd like to offer Dr. Ryan. There was a lot of meat in that, and I know he shares a lot of information with us. So I'd just like to offer an opportunity now for anyone to share any thoughts that they have. But the front row is going to have to turn around or raise your hand. Sorry, we'll figure this out. Mrs. McGinnis.
President Horst and the rest of the board and administration, I guess the only thing I'd really like to say is, I mean, I can't imagine the amount of time that our administration team has spent trying to gather the best practices for our district and put together what they have. Having been on the tour of some of our buildings earlier this evening and see the amount of work that is going on in our buildings, the amount of dissemination of material that's going on at the high school, and halls and hallways full of material for our students. I can't commend this administration enough to tell them thank you for the work and the time that they put into the work that they've done for our community. I know those parents out there who want their kids in the classroom, want it yesterday, and so do we, all of us. I know we all do. But the amount of work and the amount of research and dialogue that's had to happen so that when we do approach that day where we come face to face once again, we're doing so with the best minds of information that we can possibly put together in our district for the safety of everybody. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinnis.
Mrs. Horst,
Yes, sir, Mr. Heyer.
Dr. Ryan, do we have to wait 2 weeks before we make a decision, or is it possible that you'll have a recommendation that you could share with us slightly in advance of that next board meeting?
Mr. Heyer, I believe in the next week and a half, I'll be formulating that final piece. I want to be able to collect this week's data on this from the health department in the meeting, and then I want a partial one from the following week in front of our next board meeting to be able to put that together in a semblance that would really kind of paint, in their estimation, a very full picture. And the hope is, why do you need a couple weeks of data? Why do you need this period? Because they believe that it supports that the likelihood of, in their words, of continuing on the trends. The longer they're established, the more the likelihood they're going to be able to maintain those over time, and that speaks very directly to the continuity of school. So I think that in real time, I'll be working, although the public will get it in 2 weeks, I'll be formulating this in the next week and a half to collect that information to put another page on my report.
And the reason why I ask, I appreciate everything you just said, and I support that approach 100%. The reason why I ask is it occurs to me that we don't want to necessarily create a crescendo in 2 weeks of, oh my God, what's going to happen at that point. I mean, we have a lot of people relying on us and looking to us for this decision. And if we have enough data and we know the direction that we're going to go, let's not wait a few extra days. And if there's some information we can get out, I would look to my colleagues on the board, if I could see all of you right now. I would look to you to say, certainly I think we're all behind getting our kids back in school. I mean, I think we're all on the same page relative to this plan. So, I mean, if we have to officially vote at that point, I don't think it's a big mystery at how we're going to vote. And so let's not wait. I mean, in normal things, we put a little asterisk and say, yeah, pending board approval, and this is really no exception. But, if we know in a week and a half, or 11 days from now, you're confident in what that recommendation is going to be, certainly we can have a conversation individually, and the board would be on board, I think, supporting that, and we could get our community brought along and take some of the angst, I think, out of that decision and what's going to come. And if the data doesn't support it, let's get that out there too, right away. I mean, we've done a great job, I think, of trying to bring people along in the process, but I'm trying to avoid sort of, a big trigger moment of everybody getting very anxious about a certain decision point and try to make it a little more real time. And I know you've tried to do that. I just think that might be a way to bring people along with us as fast as possible.
Well, 2 ways maybe I can address that is, I'd say one is to our community, if the data continues on the trend that it is, which it has been, that our most likely happen will be reopening school at the beginning of October, if it continues. Obviously, if something changes in that will upset that, and that will be brought to light immediately. That being said, because I do feel like there's a high likelihood that we continue on the track, we as a school district administration and staff will start to make the inroads that we need to turn the corner to open in person. Our community just has to understand that our staff has put an amazing amount of effort in our distance learning. We'll have that regardless if we can reopen or we have to close at some time in the future, and that could be for a snow day. We're going to have the skills that we learned. It's an incredibly complex array of steps that we need to reopen to the face-to-face. which will be in some essence, we'll have a virtual program, a distance program, while we're working on not only ironing out the kinks in that, but simultaneously creating and preparing for a face-to-face scenario as well. So all those being said, I believe that we can have the inroads to be ready for that. I think our community should prepare, but they should not be surprised if I come back in a week to two to say, you know, the information I have here doesn't suggest that we're on that right path anymore. And to me, again, not being a medical expert, I will rely on those people to kind of kid this. But I do hear you, Mr. Heyer. I do not want that to be a surprise, and that's why I really appreciate this opportunity as a community, not only for me to be able to share information to everybody, but also, you know, hearing comments from our community and from our board to be able to do that. So,
in terms of our tiered and phased-in approach, which I really appreciate, obviously, if we can't make things work with our limited folks we have back now and that we'll continue to engage with, we have no chance of making it work with, you know, the entire school population. Is there any thought given to K5, you know, K7, K9, maybe 10, 12 differently? Are we considering kind of a phased-in approach, you know, beyond, you know, if the data is favorable, would we consider potentially looking at a phased-in approach as we get back to school?
Okay, great question, Mr. Heyer. Looking at what would cause us to really focus on, obviously to me, as a superintendent, I look at our earliest learners as being the most, my highest priority getting back in school, and looking at the infection rates in terms of subpopulations in the county. They're monitoring our different demographics within our school district. And I would really right now push, because right now all of our demographics are showing positive trends in terms of them being back in school. I want them all back. As far as providing stepping stones, I'm going to be working with my administrators for the next 2 weeks on several scenarios. One obviously is that continuation on the distance learning, but we're also simultaneously going to be looking at what does the reentry, how will it occur, to be able to share that on the 28th if that's the recommendation. So I'll come to bear with the idea that whether it's over a week and a half or two where we have portions of our entire elementary or secondary, and what that looks like as part of a total continuity plan. I should note that two of the other school districts that did open, Brandon and Oxford, also did an initial kind of hybrid start, and then today Oxford had everybody coming back. So they had some strategies, and I've been in conversations with them to better understand it. Obviously my goal is to get everyone back. If we can't, because of some data indicators suggest that it's not the right time, I'll come on the 28th prepared for that as well.
And let me make, I don't know if it's my last comment, but a final comment for now. I really appreciate all the effort and work that Dr. Ryan, you and the administrative team has put into this. I mean, I feel like some of our public and some of our parents think we might be being disingenuous when we say we want everybody back in school, and that's not the case. I mean, I know in conversations that you and I have had, you know, we absolutely, you and I in particular, and I think the whole board and administrative team as well, but I mean, we want kids back in school. And we're doing everything we possibly can to make that happen. And I absolutely support the approach. I support your efforts, and I appreciate the amount of work that goes into putting all of these different plans in place. And you know, obviously you shared kind of a high-level overview, but there's so much more detail, so much more daily and weekly meetings that have gone into this. You know, that there's a lot to this, and you know, we want to be as transparent as we can be in sharing this. And you know, thank you for leading us through this and you know, engaging with us. You know, as a board administrative team, I think we're lockstep and 100% on the same page. And I look forward to meeting the needs of our community and the needs of our parents as we safely, or as safe as possible, return to school in person.
Thank you, Mr. Heyer. Anyone else? Dr. Ryan, I mean, I just spent some time with you outside with some parents before this meeting, you know, who wanted to share with us, obviously, their strong feelings about returning to school in person as quickly as possible. And I'm just impressed once again, you know, with how forthright and how authentic you are when you speak about these things with parents, and the amount of work that you have put in and your team has put in is so appreciated by all of us and by all of our community. And I hope that you and the team do really, really understand that and take that gratitude on behalf of all of us to heart. This is not a normal circumstance and a normal year, and this is not a normal job by any stretch. And it's been a gargantuan effort, a heroic effort by all of you and really by our parents as well, who are having to do a heroic effort at home for right now. And we know that, and we know it's challenging for many of you. And as Mr. Heyer said, we are behind this plan. We are behind the plan to get everyone back in school as safely as it can be done. And I think Dr. Ryan is being as transparent as he can be when he communicates with us, when he communicates with the community about how we're going to do that. And so please, listen to what he says, read those emails, watch those videos, pay attention to what you see on social media. He is telling you what the roadmap is. Follow that roadmap. We are on the way to getting back to school in person. I think I said that to a parent today. We are already on the journey to getting back to school in person. So we are headed there. Trust us, we are headed there. It's what we all want for our kids. So if there's no further feedback, we will move right into sort of the next step there, which is 5.2. District goals and assessment tools regarding our extended COVID-19 learning plan. This is part of recent legislation, bipartisan legislation that was passed to assure that we are staying on track there. And I will turn that back over to Dr. Ryan, and I believe we have Mrs. Mahoney who's going to join us for that as well.
Absolutely. This goes along with the legislation that was passed a couple weeks ago, I believe on a Saturday, that dictated some of the areas that schools in the state of Michigan were going to continue to monitor the progress of students and the effects of COVID during this pandemic. And Ms. Mahoney and our instructional team is going to present and share some of the ideas behind of how we're going to accomplish that. So I'll turn it to Ms. Nancy Mahoney.
Good evening, Dr. Ryan. Good evening, Board of Education. I'd like to walk through the plan of our extended COVID-19 experience as we have started our school year. The COVID-19 global pandemic is impacting our school community in a number of ways. And as we've started the school year, we know this has been a traumatic event, and many students may have significant gaps in their learning based on the spring, based on the summer. It's been a long time re-entering school, and we're also identifying equity issues. We know that's very important, and we feel that they're somewhat more pronounced. And as we return to school in the fall, our first priority is the physical and emotional health of all our members of our school community. Due to the range of experiences students had during the remote learning portion of the 2019-20 school year, we know students may have returned this fall with a wider than usual range of competencies and preconceived biases toward distance learning. We understand many students will be behind and will need opportunities to help bridge those gaps. Teachers are going to need opportunities to collaborate. We're identifying that time, professional learning communities, as they examine student work, and they can then determine next steps and best learning practices for every single child. Clarkson Community Schools has begun the school year in a distance learning virtual environment, and we'll need to ensure that our structures are in place to promote student engagement and achievement for all. This plan that I will walk through will focus on teaching and learning with an emphasis on equity for all learners and the well-being of our students and also our staff. Educational goals. We have our screener. These are our assessments for STAR. We did purchase iReady. This is in targeting reading and math. They will be administered to our K-8 students 3 times this year. In the first 9 weeks of the school year, however, we are abiding by our K-3 reading law. So young fives, kindergarten, first, second, and third will be administered in the first 30 days. Again, we will administer these assessments in January and then again late April, early May. We also have spent much professional learning around formative assessment, and these assessments will also provide information regarding our progress towards our goals during this year. Again, all teachers will utilize professional learning communities, this time to collaborate and analyze grade level data within the formative assessment process. At the elementary, when it comes to literacy, our literacy coaches have taken a strong lead in terms of providing direction around conversation regarding data, identifying goals, areas of needs, and moving our teachers forward. So I'd like to highlight 2 goals. Goal number 1, all students, that is K-8, will improve performance in reading, our English language arts, from the fall to the spring, and we'll be measuring using our STAR and our iReady assessments. All teachers will use the formative assessment process to support adjustment to teaching and learning, to support meaningful student progress towards mastery in these academic standards. Results from these benchmark assessments, also our local reading summative assessments, and again our formative assessment will continuously drive our staff in their instruction and help to analyze the progress of our students. Goal number 2, we're going to highlight mathematics. This is all students K-8 will improve performance here in math from fall to spring, again using STAR and our iReady assessment. All teachers use the formative assessment process to support adjustment, just like in reading, to support meaningful student progress towards mastery in mathematics. Results from these benchmark assessments using our local math summative assessments as well as our formative assessment, that is what continuously drives us for the success of our students. Instructional delivery and exposure to core content. So the start of our school year has begun. Our students attend school in a distance learning, virtual environment every day for their instruction. Our students and families made a choice to start the first semester in either a distance learning with the potential for returning to face-to-face, and it is taught by a teacher. Or they chose Clarkston Virtual that utilizes a remote program that is self-directed with the support of a Clarkston mentor. This schedule surrounds our students in their health and safety for all. I know you know this, but I want to just draw attention again to the 2 options that we're offering students right now. Our Clarkston Virtual and highlighting curriculum, we have purchased Lincoln Learning as well as Pearson Connexus. This was approved by you, the board. In a distance learning, we're following our traditional established curriculum, again taught by a classroom teacher. When it comes to instruction, our certified Clarkston teachers will serve as mentors in our Clarkston Virtual program. Each student will have 1 mentor. Our ratio is about 1 to 30, and students will use an online platform with the support of their mentor, and Clarkston Community School teachers in the content levels can support our students as well. In the distance learning, our certified teachers, our classroom teachers, they are instructing. Students will have the same teacher as in the temporary distance learning contingency. We hope is in the face-to-face instruction, and this makes for a smooth transition back to when we become in person. Our daily schedule for Clarkston Virtual, it is self-paced. They engage in learning on their own schedule, our students do. They move through curriculum slower or faster as needed. Attendance is not taken in the Clarkston Virtual, but mentors keep what's called a mentor log, and they document the progress of our students and help students to stay on track. Our daily schedule for distance learning looks much like the school day. It is a set schedule and assigned login times for live instruction. Daily attendance is taken, and students are expected to participate in learning with classroom in real time. And lunch and breaks are scheduled for our distance learning. Support structures for Clarkston Virtual teachers and those mentors are available for real-time support, even after hours by appointment. Face-to-face and virtual meetings with mentors may be held. And in our distance learning, our teachers are available in the real-time instruction as well as responding to emails throughout the day. All meetings are virtual. When it comes to instruction, our curriculum for core academic areas are aligned to state standards. Starting in late last spring, our academic task force was created. And this was administrators, our subject area coordinators, administrators at the board office, to provide and maintain an instructional delivery model that would embrace well-being, academic success, and to continue our partnerships with our community. Our subject area coordinators even led work groups in specific content areas, and I bulleted what we focused on: instructional delivery, assessment, feedback for not only students but also for our parents, interventions for academic and social emotional learning, access to materials and supplies, IEP goals and how they'll be met, and family engagement. Key ideas, very important in our strategic plan. They have been identified for our courses and our grade levels, and this has really helped in terms of our pacing guides for our teachers to follow. This curriculum and instruction and assessment toolkit was provided by Oakland Schools. It is a tool that can be utilized by our teachers to help design new, better, utilizing existing pre-assessments. So this has helped to plan for differentiation in our content areas. We'll use the results from our pre-assessments to always inform instruction, and it's also helped to prioritize our K-12 instructional standards. These toolkits, along with our pacing guides, again, which support our strategic plan and key ideas, will also help guide our teachers to implement instructional approaches. So to meet the range of our student needs as they return to school, we want to identify assessment ideas that allow students to demonstrate understanding in a variety of ways. Assess and provide instruction in the content areas in the face-to-face, virtual, or even sometimes a blended classroom environment. And Stacy, I'll let you speak to the social emotional piece here.
Okay. So we incorporate well-being and the social-emotional learning into our instruction. It's a natural part of that, as well as we even have our Wednesday slated for even more direct and targeted instruction in that. In addition, we have purchased iReady, which is for our at-risk learners to help enhance their learning and to meet their needs based on where they're at. It offers some additional practice, so they will still be taught by their classroom teacher, but this allows them to have additional practice in math and literacy, targeted very specifically at the level that they are at. It gives them an opportunity to work on this, as I said, along with what they would do in the classroom, and it is the classroom teacher who will monitor their progress.
When it comes to assessment and grading, we'll be monitoring, we'll be evaluating patterns and trends for academic performance, identifying effective instructional ideas, and always providing guidance, adjusting our curriculum and instruction across grade levels and schools. Using the formative assessment process, we will be very powerful in our practice. This is embedded in our teaching and learning. Continuously observe our students. We've talked about that. We respond and we want to be reactive to how our students are performing and to meet students where they are at to modify our instruction. To provide in-time data for both our teachers and our students to accelerate their learning and progress. And what gives us a more complete picture of what our students know and what they are able to do when we utilize formative assessment. So our grading for our distance learning. Grades are given at the secondary level, very similar to a traditional face-to-face model. Our students and parents are able to track progress through the parent view as well as parent-teacher conferences. Progress monitoring at the elementary level is communicated through our learning feedback document, our progress reports, which we call Glow and Grow, and parent-teacher conferences. In our virtual program, grades are given at the secondary level, again, very similar to a traditional face-to-face model. Our students and parents will be able to track progress right through the learning platform, and progress monitoring at the elementary level will be communicated again through the learning feedback document and reports from the online platform of Lincoln Learning.
So for equitable access, we ensured, thankfully, with the Board of Education approving a one-to-one technology program so that every student will have a device that is district-owned for the 2021 school year. One, this helps with the standardization that everyone will have the same device that helps to limit or reduce the level of support that's needed to support that at home. We also have a filtering and monitoring system along with a classroom management system that allows us to filter and comply to the Children's Protection Act, monitoring for their social and emotional well-being, as well as having a classroom management that teachers are able to lock students into specific websites or applications while they're teaching, so that allows to limit any kind of distraction. It also allows us that as students, if we go in and out of a face-to-face and a distance learning, it removes any kind of barrier of technology for that teaching and learning to happen, as well as to provide minimal disruption between the phases. It also helps with our health and well-being while at school, because if everyone has their own device, we do not have to then worry about any cleaning protocols of the Chromebooks multiple times throughout the day, per cart, per device, and everything, and a student just has what they need right in front of them, right as they need it.
And students with identified special needs. So our administration, our special education department, and our staff will continue to collaborate with parents during this school year. Consistently, we are reviewing our individual student programs. We want to facilitate students' access to and their progress in the general education curriculum as defined by the COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Plan. We're continuing to implement IEPs on an ongoing basis, and always taking information from our state and federal government and our local public health department partners. Questions, feedback?
Hey, trustees, before we get into questions, let me acknowledge that I did mess up a bit on the last item. If you move my cheese, I'm going to be slow to catch it here. So we had a citizen who had requested to address the board on the last item. Mrs. McLean, were you able to message her and make sure that she still did wish to address the board? Sorry about that, Leanne. Okay, if her hand is still raised, let me just say, Leanne, let us go ahead and just ask any questions we have on this item, and then we will get to you to address the board. So I apologize to you. I even had it written right here. I'm just out of my element here. We're getting used to this new format. So please, I acknowledge that, and I ran a note over to Ms. McLean as soon as Mrs. Mahoney started talking, but I didn't want to interrupt. So let us have a chance to ask some questions about this plan, and then we will get back to your comments. So Leanne, just hold tight for a few more minutes. So trustees, questions or comments for Mrs. Mahoney or Mrs. Cusio on our COVID-19 learning plan that we now will submit to the state and review once a month, every 30 days as required by legislation? Looking around the room. I actually had a couple of questions. Am I the only one? I'm happy to.
I have a comment.
Okay, Mr. Need, I'll let you go.
And thank you, Mrs. Mahoney and Mrs. Puzio, for the presentation. I applaud what you've done and I support it. I just think it's unfortunate that in passing the legislation that our legislature did not see fit to give us some relief from the assessment requirements for this school year. I think we're going to be devoting a lot of time to time that would be better spent in a lot of other areas. But we had to do it, and I think we've done the best we can, so thank you.
Right. And I think assessment was the one thing that I was wondering about. I mean, we've been hearing since the spring about the learning gaps, the assumption, and I think probably rightfully so, that these learning gaps were going to grow over time. And so I wondered just what we were expecting maybe to see, knowing that we have to assess students within the first handful of weeks of school, the first 9 weeks of school. And so are we going to try to compare that at all to last year? I mean, I can't even remember when we would have assessed students last year, if we did it all, or are we just going to sort of say new benchmark and we'll go from here and then look at it again in the spring? And so I'm just wondering, sort of maybe philosophically, how are we going to take learning needs or learning gaps and say, here's where we know we want to go, or how we're going to try to close or address those, if there's sort of a philosophical sort of outlook or goal there.
Yeah, President Horst, I know we have a couple years of data now. Our last assessment was last January. I think it does, lend a curiosity to compare as how our students have performed, recognizing that we are in this pandemic. And I think we still need to analyze the data that we see in order to build our instruction around our current state. So I think our literacy coaches, again, will lead in the elementary when it comes to literacy in terms of those data meetings that they've had with grade level teams, just to see how our students are performing. We can compare how they were in last January. We compared, how did fifth graders perform as fifth graders last year and compared to this year. There's lots of ways that we can look at the data to analyze in terms of our best next steps.
Thank you so much.
I'd add on to that too, that looking at historically the return on data from different demographics, that we have to look at pandemic-wide across the country and in good old Clarkston too. If students are struggling economically or socio-economically, that they are higher at risk. If students are special education, they're higher at risk. We need to really double down when it comes to the supports after the dust settles, that we can really engage in ways that we've never been engaged before. And I think that we're going to have to be creative. Back before this all started, if the board recalls back February, March, we were talking about equity plans in Clarkston. All the elements that went in my dissertation that affect and can be directed towards narrowing gaps in equity are even more critical when we come back full strength after this pandemic, or even in the midst as we're going through it. And all the different factors of getting our teachers and kids is magnified for students that struggle with more than just school. So I think that we're going to recognize that. I hope that our legislators continue to work with the U.S. Department of Education after our recent refusal for a waiver on MSTEP of not doubling or tripling down on our assessment packages. And also that if the state sees fit, I would very much like to see a budget come out to where we could really look to plan on what those supports are and what we can count on in terms of financial support from the state of Michigan as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Agree 100%.
President Horst?
Mrs. McGinnis?
Dr. Ryan brought up a point that I think is very appropriate to keep ourselves and our community informed about the fact that our cheese has been moved. I think we all can recognize that. If you haven't read the book, it's a really good read. It's kind of informative. But as we look forward to our legislature putting together a budget for school appropriations for us, we really need to make sure that our legislators don't fall into the trap of expectations in the form of penalties. Because for too long, I've been a board member going on 13 years now, for too long, our legislators' way to deal with the unknown, No Child Left Behind, third grade reading, numerous other legislations that all have good intentions, but also always seem to have this caveat to say, and if you don't do it, we're going to penalize you. So I really look forward to us having a opportunity to have dialogue with our legislatures, both state and federal, regarding how do we all come out of this. This is an unknown that none of us planned for, none of us asked for it, and there are going to be lasting issues for a couple years that we're going to have to deal with to make up for some of these problems this pandemic has caused. And the last thing public school systems need is to be penalized for it. So I really want to ring the alarm that snow days are probably going to become a thing in the past, that our legislatures' expectations in the dialogue I've had with legislators is that there won't be snow days anymore. There'll be, yes, you won't be picked up with the school bus to come to school because it's not safe for the buses to ride on the roads, but the students will still be expected to go to school. And this virtual schooling that we're virtual and or remote, however you want to look at it, is the new snow day of the future in the mind of many of our legislators. And I'm not knocking that, because I think there's some good value in that when we come into January, February, sometimes even into March, when it seems like we can't get a whole week of school in because of snow. The cheese that got moved is going to be used to model an appropriate learning environment on a day that our kids would have normally stayed home. So there's many factors of things that are going to change and continue to change moving forward because of this, as an outcome because of this. And my biggest fear is penalty will be part of it somewhere, somehow. So I think it behooves us as a Board of Education to be the advocates for our communities, to make sure that this pandemic that we all didn't plan for doesn't become a penalty on us when it comes to the education that we can provide for our kids.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinnis. Other final questions or thoughts for our administrators? All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us remotely. Okay, Mrs. McLean, if we can bring Leanne in, and I apologize for zooming right by you, so to speak, after 5.1, but glad to have you now, and as soon as Ms. McLean activates you, we are ready to hear from you, and you'll have 2 minutes.
All right. Thank you, President Horst. Actually, coming in after this part was quite apropos, because as a teacher in the district, I wanted to make sure that you as a board, school board, were aware that what you faced tonight with the technology issues and trying to get everybody connected and stopping the feedback and all of those kinds of things is multiply that by 20 students who have little to no computer skills and on a daily basis. That's what we are, or many of us in the district are facing. The instructional technologists have been amazing with their trying to help problem solve, but today I had 1/3 of my class that could not fully participate because of technology issues. Not only is it frustrating to the students, to the parents, and to us as teachers, it prevents us from teaching. And our concern as the teachers, not to mention the desire to be able to actually teach and not trying to problem solve technology throughout the day, but how we can effectively meet some of those educational goals and assessment expectations that Nancy and Stacy just presented to you. When we have students that we can't hear speak, or they can't hear us give directions, I'm very concerned on how we're going to be able to do these things. And I just wanted to make sure as a school board you were aware, and I'm hoping that you can put more direction and support into solving these issues for the amount of time that we are still in this distance learning program. I know everybody in the district has worked incredibly hard, but with the technology glitches that we're running into, we are falling woefully short in being able to meet these incredibly important educational goals that we want for our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments.
We do have 2 additional audience members who raised their hands. I can tell if you wanted to let them know when they should speak.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for raising your hands and indicating your interest. If you will hold on, please, until we get to item 9. We have a couple of action item approvals until then, but no other lengthy business, so it should not be too much longer. So let us move on to action items then. Action item 6.1 is approval of personnel changes. Dr. Ryan, I don't know, is Mr. Lucido joining us tonight? I guess I need a motion. Okay, I guess I need a motion first, and then see if Mr. Lucido has anything to share with us.
I move that the Board of Education approves the personnel changes as provided in our board packet.
Support.
Were there any questions for Mr. Lucido, or I don't know if Mr. Lucido, there was one late addition, I don't know if Mr. Lucido wanted to provide any context.
Yes, we did add one position. We are looking to add one additional counselor to support our shared service program. and potentially help with some of the work from the virtual program. We've been using retirees to kind of help us, guide us through, but from evaluating the program and just going through another transition year here with some of the turnover we've had, we do think that a full-time counselor is the right support that this needs long-term.
All right, thank you so much. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.2 is approval of memorandums of understanding. 6.2.1 is the Clarkston Transportation Association. May I have a motion for 6.2.1, please? Oh, no, they're the same. Are they the same motion? Oh, we can do both. Yes?
I move that the Board of Education approves the memorandum of understandings for the Clarkston Transportation Association and the Clarkston Para-Educators Association as presented.
Thank you.
Support.
Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I do, Mrs. Horace.
Mr. Need.
On the transportation MOU, the paragraph 1 states that the funding is going to be continued until the earlier of several items, one of which is today. So, Mr. Lucido, was it the intent that this MOU, in effect, would expire today?
No, it's the reason we have these MOUs and working with our unions, our contract requires a 30-day notice before our staff are laid off in both of these bargaining groups. In a financial crisis, which we've agreed with these unions that we're allowed to do a 10-day notice. I wanted to work with these bargaining groups to waive that 10-day notice. August 31st was the first day back that the transportation unit was supposed to return. And during the time that we were negotiating this in August, because this was approved originally with the leadership and then had to go through the ratification process. When we first proposed this, the extra 300 from the federal government was not guaranteed. So once Michigan accepted that they will be implementing that kind of made this a moot point. But however, this is the MOU that was already approved with this bargaining group. So basically what that period says is if for some reason that extra federal funding didn't come in, that the school district would pay the difference between the unemployment and the employees' regular wages. So that was one of the agreements that we made to be able to move forward with avoiding that 10-day waiting period for layoff notifications.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Lucido? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.3 is approval of secondary English language arts titles. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the purchase of The Breadwinner and The Hate You Give as titles for the secondary English language arts program for a total of $5,596.16 as presented.
Support. Any questions or discussion? Mrs. Crane?
I'd just like to say that I highly commend the people who've chosen the books, especially The Hate You Give, and as we are purchasing it for our Renaissance program, I'd like to eventually see this book or books like it, which are by and about people of color in our regular curriculum. I was very happy to see this come through our packet.
Other questions?
Mrs. Horst, I would just echo Mrs. Crane's comments. I think we actually this summer received a very, I would say, proactive petition from community members, but most notably some of our Clarkston High School graduates within, I would say, a 2-decade time frame who were really supportive of us adding more works like this into our curriculum. So I think it's just appropriate to extend a thank you to those graduates for leading that charge and engaging our community and making us more aware of the fact that we need to be doing more of this. So, thank you.
Seeing no other questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 7 is report items. There are none. Item 8 is discussion items. There are none. Item 9 is citizen comments. Citizens are welcome to address the board at this point on any topic. Mrs. McLean, you said we had 2 citizens that indicated they would like to address the board. I will go ahead and let you activate them.
Our first is Sarah LeBlanc.
Okay, Sarah, welcome. As soon as Ms. McLean activates you, if you'll state your name, and you have approximately 2 minutes.
I'm sorry, I must have hit something. I did not mean to raise my hand or anything. I'm all set. Thank you
Oh,
guys
no
for
problem.
everything that
Okay.
you're doing.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Next, we have Amy Beatty.
Amy, as soon as... Great, I think we can hear you. Hello? Oh, that's me. Okay.
I don't have anyone else with their hand raised at this time.
Okay. All right, item 10 is information items. As we indicated earlier, our next Board of Education meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, Monday, September 28th, currently scheduled for 7 p.m. We will attempt this format again, although we may play with the arrangement here a little bit in person, and we will have a Zoom link for our public participation. Item 11 is adjournment. May I have a motion, please?
I move we adjourn.
Support.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good night.